Welcome, Internet Capitalists, back to, I believe, our sixth interview with crypto founders. Today, we're with David Minarsch from Olas Network. David, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Hey, nice meeting you and joining you on the show. Looking forward.
So one thing that's not really crypto related, but I always ask the founders because I'm personally interested is what's your background and how did you get from wherever you started to crypto now?
Yeah, great question. My background is in game theory. Basically, I did a PhD in game theory at Cambridge University in the UK, and where I also for the first time came across Bitcoin. That was in 2013, but I was very fascinated by the technology. I was not fascinated by the coin at all. I should have been maybe. And then,
All
yeah, and then later I came back to it in 2017 through there was a craze at the end of the year, right? And I had been building a startup outside of crypto, and lots of my friends were actually building in crypto. And then properly, I went into crypto in 2019, early 2019. And really, what ultimately drew me there was that I had realized I wanted to use crypto incentives together with and just crypto protocols together with um, basically building agents, because agents, I saw this interesting overlap with AI, and then game theory sort of straddles both agents and AI as well as crypto. So those three areas, like crypto, game theory, and AI, basically brought me back to crypto at that intersection, and then I've been working there since, building agents and building agent protocols.
Okay. So it seems like all of that put together at least made you start thinking about starting Olas and what Olas is. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that seminal moment when it started and when it happened, how'd you launch, and kind of the logistics of how big you are, things like that?
Yeah, that's a lot of things to cover, but I'll do it. So we basically co-founded a company called Valerie in summer 2021 with my co-founders Oak and David, and the idea was to build like a agentic protocol that will ultimately give every human an agent that does valuable things for them, where they can outright own the agent. Like we very much believe, and you should be able to fully own your agent, not rent it from some like kind of Web2 provider. And initially, we had this very intense focus on DAOs, because we thought, okay, well, decentralized autonomous organizations aren't really autonomous because a lot of the work actually gets done by humans. Can we pair smart contracts with agents to kind of solve that? And the answer was yes, we can, but the go-to market was not so great, and we had a lot of struggle there. But we launched in 2020 late, and then sort of over the years grew. We had some interesting use cases with balancers, ceramic, a couple of other like CowSwap, a couple of other well-known brands believed in us. And then there was an inflection point in 2023. So early 2023 was when you really could start using sort of large language model APIs. And that really changed the game for agents, because before, this idea of having a software agent use a wallet was very feasible. I've done that since working at Fetch, since 2019. But actually the agents themselves were quite limited because of the AI models, and then suddenly you have this kind of explosion of capabilities with large language models and real accessibility thereof. And so the kind of agent we started building in 2023 were very different suddenly, and we realized actually there's also an opportunity to go much differently to market. And so in summer 2023 we launched the token in a sort of LBP, like a liquidity bootstrapping pool on Fjord, to a good success, and then we grew from there. And in terms of what shifted is, rather than focusing on DAOs as customers, we really focused on end users to give them their agents that do valuable things for them. And some of our biggest use cases today are around prediction markets and DeFi, where end users run these agents in an app called Pearl that is on their desktop. And then they have full control over their agent, and their agent autonomously does useful things for them.
Okay. All right. So I have some questions later about Pearl and things like that. But the one thing I always ask all the founders is, through this process of from 2019, 2020 through 2023, 2024, what has been the hardest thing for you as the organization has grown and changed? What's been the hardest thing to manage?
I think when you have a product in crypto, you tend to have um, usually two the moment you have the token, because the token is one product, and then you have the actual end user product people kind of would think of as the product, but they're two products in their own right, right? Um, One offers the sort of utility of the agent, the other the utility of the network, and so one of the biggest things as a founder I find is to be able to balance those things, because the requirements are very different. When you're building a product that creates utility for the end user over like agent products, you have to have a long-term focus. You have to really think about strategically, how do you build good products that users want, but also how do these products improve, because AI improves every day, and how do I tap into these improvement flywheels. On the other hand, you have tokens, and it's very cyclical. Depends on the macro situation. Depends on the specific narrative you set in, and sometimes these things sort of move in opposite directions, sometimes together, and sometimes it just creates a lot of friction between the two products effectively. And I think that navigating that, where you kind of don't totally lose sight of the long term and just become this very short termist, that kind of wouldn't be for me. And then at the same time, also acknowledging that there's a community who is probably a bit more short-term focused on some of those things, and you want to take them along and explain them your vision and kind of invite them to be part of the journey. That I think is a daily struggle.
Yep. It's funny what you describe is a daily struggle in traditional finance too, with long-term vision versus what the shareholders want. It's the same thing, long-term vision versus what the token holders want right now. And it's funny that crypto and traditional finance are very, very different, but the problems are still very, very similar.
Yeah. I mean, a funny thing with that as well is that crypto sort of leaves out the entire period of the private company, right? Almost
Right.
entirely. It just goes straight to the public one, in the sense that the token becomes public, and there's a public network and public metrics, and that yeah, puts you very much into that camp you just described.
Well, let's jump into the technology now. So this is my lead-in question. 3 sentences or less. What is Olas?
3 sentences or less. Okay, so Olas is all about giving you an agent that does useful things for you, be it health, wealth, or well-being ultimately. Today, Olas coordinates agents so that your own agent can do those valuable things for you. And the biggest use case we have are in prediction markets and DeFi.
Okay. So you'd mentioned this earlier, where you guys were involved in DAOs originally, and now it's sort of shifted to personal agents. I made the note here that at least initially it felt like Olas was almost like the SAP software for these DAOs. Um, and there are cases right now where there are organizations that can't keep up on the basic stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Olas and a series of agents to do this stuff would be perfect. Is that the right way to think about the enterprise side of the organization and what the agents on that side do?
Yeah, I think historically it's definitely the right part. And then we still see us coming back there, but at the moment, very much the focus on the personal. So when we're working as Valerie the labs with partners to realize use cases on Olas, then those partners tend to be other chain ecosystem, other protocol ecosystems that want to bring usage to their chains and protocols, and that see agents as a means for users to have a better experience on their chains and protocols. And so we work with these partners to still create these personal agents mostly. But I do think what we'll see is that in the future, we'll come back to these agents also affecting organization as large. It's just that from a simple growth point of view, it's easier to convince one user to adopt the product than it is to coordinate an entire organization. You have a shorter sales cycle and quicker iteration.
Sure. Okay. Well, that brings me to Pearl. Um, I kind of read through it, and it seems like it's a way for me, the user, to create my own agent. Um, One thing that I've kind of been critical of agents thus far, and Coinbase put out a video about this, is it's like a script in a terminal window to create this agent and do this stuff. My background is in programming, but I still don't want to do that anymore. So is Perl a tool that I can use to make that easier?
So that's a great question. So Perl actually goes even further. It's entirely no code, and you're not like in the sense currently creating entirely new agents. So there's still like quite like there's kind of agent types which you can select and then run those, and you can increasingly configure them, right?
Okay.
So what's currently in Perl is still an alpha product, has hundreds of users though, but what we're currently in the process of doing is turning Perl from this app, which has a single type of agent in it, to an app store of agents. And so it enables you to effectively select those templates and configure them to your needs. Um, I think what you describing in the question is sort of more what we would see the builders doing. Like we obviously have builders in the Olas ecosystem as well who create these agents, but we really differentiate them from operators because I think realistically, most end users they just want a finished product. They don't want to like also build their product.
No, no, no. I just want to eat the cake. I don't want to make the cake, right?
Exactly. And so we really, in Olas is the nice thing. I think also one of our learnings, we have like really factored out these different roles. So you can come into Olas and you can be a builder and actually build these agents, but you can also just be what we call an operator, which is an end user who just selects one of those agents, run them, or you can be, someone like Mode or Cello or Gnosis or Near who come and say, okay, our chain ecosystem would be great for agents. How can we work with you and other protocols to bring like agent use cases on Olas on our chain? So there's very different roles you can take in a protocol, and there's even simple things like if after this video you're like, I want to explore Olas, you can actually like become a contributor to Olas, which means you connect your Twitter account to the system, and then if you talk about Olas and like provide educative content that achieves reach, you might even like get rewarded for that. So there's very like low level, high level, kind of
Huh.
easy, harder ways to get involved.
Okay. So, well, I'm definitely going to connect my Twitter. That seems very
Oh,
easy. But okay, I'm going to give you an example. I'm an operator. Here's what I want to do. I want to have an agent that will go check my rewards on Merkle and shoot me a message. I don't email, text. It can be a pop-up notification, whatever. I don't really care. But I don't want to have to do that every 3 hours. I want an agent to do that for me. I want an agent just to look at the interest rates on a loop I'm forming to make sure, so I can make sure it's still where I want it to be. Is that something I could go in right now as an operator and describe to one of the pre-made agents and have it figure out how to do that, or what's that process?
exactly. So with this product, which we're in the process of launching on Mode, called Modius, um, that is the ultimate like that will enable you to do this ultimately. Like the current UX is that you actually still have to be very technical. You have to download like this client, you run it in your terminal and so on because it's not yet in Perl. Once it's in Perl, you'll basically be presented with a little chatbot box where you can in natural language express what you actually want your agent to do. And then the agent has a set of capabilities, which will then basically map your requests into these capabilities and tell you, okay, I can already do this or I can't yet do this. And so if it can already do it, it will just autonomously start doing it. If it can't yet do it, the system will know about it, and builders in the background will be able to
Hmm.
facilitate those capabilities in the future. So that's what Modius is. It's a sort of evolving autonomous fund manager for you on your desktop.
Okay, and Modius is specific and fine-tuned to Mode Network.
Correct.
Is that
So this will be a mode specific, or is a mode specific agent. Yeah.
okay? So, kind of coming full circle to this enterprise idea, it seems like some of the capabilities you have, if you can build the back end and couple it tightly with specific networks like Mode, then users of Mode or other agents on Mode have a much easier way to interface to what they need, the information they need to solve their problems. Is that a right way to think about it?
I think so, but I would almost like push that even further. Basically, I think existing DeFi users are quite versed in like the terminology and maybe even the apps they have to go to and apps to, get the information and
Yeah.
action on it, but they might not want it, right? So for them, like they might not want to do it or have no time or whatever. So for them, Modius is sort of solving that if they want to outsource that work to their agent. But really, what we're going after is that even like much more basic user and in terms of like their knowledge of DeFi, which is one that might not even have context. So the nice thing when I have a natural language interfaces, I can express it in my ways. So
Yes.
my mom can say, okay, here's $100, invest it safely, right? And
Yep.
then I can say, here's $100. I'm happy for it to go into Aave and Uniswap, nowhere else, because I only trust those two. Someone else can be very degen and say, okay, like go for the latest like meme stuff that is popping up on Mode, right? And so what's beautiful about that is you can express it at the level of context that you naturally have, rather than having to adopt some context like about like an app and having to understand what is a DEX and what is a lending protocol. And so I think that's where how we grow DeFi ultimately. It's like through creating interfaces that are much more user friendly and don't require them to understand all and everything about crypto, which is way too complex for your, quote unquote average user, right?
Yep. So in what you just said, it seems like the idea of a wallet, of a blockchain, is completely abstracted away. I mean, your mom is not going to want to do that. She's going to want to pick up her phone, click the Modius app, and say, "Hey, invest this $100 safely for me," and put her phone down. Is that the evolution that you're eventually moving towards?
Yeah, so obviously we'll take some time to get to the phone, simply because we're like so focused on having the user be able to like own the full experience. But like the phone is the ultimate target, right? Like and that kind of experience you just described. Like step one is, what we're currently doing with Pearl, the App Store. Step two is make that experience like effectively feel flawless in a Web2 like for like comparison
Hmm.
on the desktop, and then go from the desktop to mobile. So that's how I see it.
So the web 2 would just be like how I interact with Chat GPT now. I just natural language type in what I want,
Oh,
and
exactly. So on the natural interface level, it would be a bit like that. But the key difference between something like ChatGPT today, although they're also changing this, and what we have here is like an autonomous agent that then actually goes and does that in the background continuously, right? So with
okay,
agent, it lives on your desktop, and whilst you do other things on your desktop, it does its thing on behalf of you. ChatGPT, obviously, the moment you close the chat, that's it, right?
yeah,
There's nothing running in the background doing things on your behalf.
yeah, that bugs me about Chat GPT because I said, can you check Twitter every day and do? And it's like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, well,
Yeah,
that's no use.
I think they will have a similar agentic product soon.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I love that. Kind of thinking in the background a little bit. There could be multiple Pearl or Olas operators or agents running around on a network. Plus, the network has its own set of agents that are doing whatever it needs or getting information. Is there the opportunity for this organic way for these agents to find each other
Yes,
and get, created their own ecosystem, kind of almost unbeknownst to us?
totally. And that's one of the sort of interesting things I think going forward. I also would say, before we go deeper into this, like agents, autonomous AI agents, you can see them as products, and that's like what we were talking about so far, where basically I, as a user, delegate a goal to my agent. It works within that goal with some degree of autonomy, but it will not just suddenly do the exact opposite or change the goal or whatever.
Yes.
And then you have like this concept of an agent that is much more like you and I, where it's we might start with a certain goal, and then over the course of the day that changes, and over the lifetime it certainly does. And it's more like a being, a software being. And so the question then is totally different. Everything is different. And I think these things will at some point, I mean, already in some form, they're touching each other, because you can have these sort of influencer agents. Some of them we have on Olas as well, where you initially give them a goal, like a persona, but then the system is designed to evolve its persona. So it will change the way in which it talks, what it does, and so on. I think there's qualitatively quite a big difference between these utilitarian, like product-based agents, and then these sort of more persona agents. And Olas facilitates both. And Olas also has a nice way for these agents to find each other and sort of dynamically use this. So an example is CreatorBits. They have these like a whole launch pad for these kind of influencer agents. And they have integrated Olas because it dynamically expands the capabilities of the agents. So they implement like this library called Mac Client, which connects to our agent marketplace called the Mac Marketplace. And they can then their agents can dynamically learn what new capabilities are available in the marketplace, and can then dynamically use them, right? So without any human having to getting involved into making those choices.
Got it. That is, I mean, that is ultra cool. And that leads me, that whole comment leads me to two questions. So as these more sophisticated agents evolve, is there the mechanism built in to communicate back to their human creator or whatever we are, what they're thinking or what they're changing into?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately depends on the implementation always. And like Ola's stack offers you a way to implement such systems. There's also other ways to build these. And Ola's protocol is agnostic as to what kind of implementation you go with. It defines a certain like set of incentives and on-chain mechanisms that these agents can play into, but it's very unopinionated about the exact implementation.
Okay. Okay. Then the second is more pragmatic question. The comment about the agents learning what other agents can provide through this marketplace. Are there sorry about that. Are there standards evolving that define what those marketplace interfaces are? Or is that sort of at this point kind of roll your own? You know, you guys have decided and you're using it.
Yeah, so I've mentioned I've been working in Asian for a long time. Asian's been around for a long time, much longer than a lot of sort of newbies know, which is multi-agent systems is a long study and subfield of AI. And there's entire companies who have like multi-agent systems deployed in some form or another. There's like agent-to-agent communication protocols, which is an entire like literature field. What my take is on all of this is that large language models really changed the way I think about this. Like historically, you had to have like very defined agent-to-agent communication protocols, very defined interfaces for marketplace and stuff, because it was less dynamic. Now, your agent, with the help of a large language model, can like basically interpret any written text, code, and so on, right? So there is no longer the need to be very strict about the interfaces from that point of view. But then on the other hand, obviously, ultimately, in order to implement the marketplace, you will be implementing some interface. Like the way we look at it from Olas is, yes, you can like go through the sort of ERC route and define a bunch of interfaces and spend a lot of time there being very academic about it. But ultimately, as we see with Blu-ray versus DVD, right? Like, or what was it, Blu-ray versus something else? Like standards basically win by adoption, right? They don't win by academic thought.
Yes.
I'm academic by training, but like I'm very pragmatic about this. You just got to build the thing, and whoever gets the most adoption, that will be the standard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And you said something that like really hit me in that with the large language models, as long as the interface code on the other side is exposed, they can just look at it.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, well, there it is. And kind of magic happens and they understand it. So that's a good way to look at it. And for my generation, it was VHS and Betamax, not Blu-ray. So
Yeah.
I get that. So I want to ask one very practical question before I move on to the future. And that is, this is all really cool, but how does your organization and our users actually monetize this and make money?
Yeah, so obviously Valerie is a lab, so we have a business model that's separate from Olas. We currently basically just build for Olas.
Mm,
And Olas, the way this works is we have a couple of fee mechanisms. One is tied to the liquidity model. So Olas is a very cross-chain protocol. We're on 9 chains and adding. And on those chains, we have strong liquidity through a mechanism called protocol and liquidity, and that generates fees. And there's a second mechanism which is um, around the Mac marketplace, which is actually most interesting going forward, in my opinion, which is as the agents trade with each other, they make these micropayments, and the protocol is able to turn on a fee switch to collect some share there. It's a bit like the Uniswap fee switch.
mm.
Currently doesn't collect those, but that's the fees, the turnover is already there in terms of the agents trading with each other. And then the third thing, which we're have unannounced, will come next week. It's AIP6, which talks about like a third means of fee capture, which we're very excited about.
Okay, great. I like the whole, collecting a small transaction fee as to be part of the universe, basically. That's the cost of doing business, right?
It's the cost of coordination, right? Like
Yeah.
the Olas protocol provides a service, and you pay a fee for it.
Okay, so moving on to the future, when we come back and we talk next year, a year from today, December the 5th, what is your vision for where Olas has moved to in 1 year?
Like obviously, we have daily active agents already at a high relative to the industry. I think we're the largest. We have had over 2 million transactions, out of which over 1 million are agent-to-agent transactions. So we had like loads of agents communicate and trade with each other already. Um, our aim is to significantly like multiply the number of daily active agents, so in the tens of thousands by the end of next year, and really continuously drive value towards users of Pearl. We want more Pearl adoption and make it so that people really get as much utility out of running an agent locally on the device, coordinated by the OLS protocol in the background.
Awesome. Well, I know the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go look at Pearl immediately and see what this can do and provide feedback because it seems like it's right up my alley.
Yeah. And like particularly once the App Store comes in and more users in it, I think you should definitely try it out
No,
then.
I absolutely will. That's great. So I want to be sensitive to your time, but the last thing I ask everyone is if there's any alpha you'd like to share, anything at all, nothing at all, completely up to you.
Yeah, I mean we had a AIP5 come out, which is about the marketplace. I think the alpha is if you're building an agent, you can get it basically monetized by plugging it into our marketplace because there's already agents out there looking for other agents,
Mhm.
including our own. So that's for the builders. If you're just generally curious around like building, also get in touch. We have a Dev Academy, and then more generally, I think the alpha is in using these products. I mean, we have a lot of interesting products coming still in December. It's very heavy shipping month for all us. So follow our channel at Autonomous and see what happens.
It's like Christmas. Christmas time is shipping time. That's
It
great.
literally is Christmas.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, well, David, thank you very much. For me, I love talking about this. For me, this was great. I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thanks for your time.